Yes, Prof.
Okay, thank you. And well, everyone, let me see. Okay. So here we are. My name is Angela Piedad Suarez Torres. I belong to SENA Centro Boyacá from the SEA Duitama. I'm the course director of this environment. I'm professional on international relations from Universidad Rosario, specialized on European studies University. I have a master's degree on international politics from the University of Newcastle in the UK. In this course, we have two tutors, Miguel Enrique Restrepo Lobo and Yesid Leonardo Suarez Arciniegas. Professor Miguel, you want to make a presentation of yourself, please?
Sure, Prof. Now, good morning, everyone. First of all, thank you very much, Professor Angela. I'm very glad to be part of this academic team. And I appreciate the opportunity to work together and support our students in their learning process. My name is Miguel Enrique Restrepo Lobo, and I'll be the lecturer for International Business Management in the first semester of 2026. I have a background in finances and international trade, and with a specialization and a master's degree in financial management. I also have professional experience in financial analysis and corporate financial management. 8 years of experience in university teaching in areas such as finances, economics, international business, and entrepreneurship. I look forward to contributing to development of this course. I would like to apologize for the delay in reviewing the activities. I only had formal access for the course until last week due to onboarding procedures. I have been gradually catching up with the pending task, and everything should be up to date by Friday or Saturday. A pleasure for
Thank you very much, Professor Miguel. Yes, I want to extend that apologies from you, and it's in general because we've had some troubles in the assignation of tutors, in the management of the platform. So it took us a bit longer for us to mark all the activities, to go through the forums. But now we're like trying to get up on time with the activities. So we hope that the activity that we're going to start today, we're going to open the forums later after this web conference. It's going to rule better, and that we're going to be on time on the marking of the second activity that you should already uploaded at latest last night. Thank you very much. We continue. The class plan for today, after the presentation, we're going to talk a little bit about the internationalization opportunities and processes, the company internationalization, the role of diplomacy, the challenges in internationalization, and at the end, we're going to have some feedback from the students. If you have any doubts, if you have questions, just raise your hand and let us know the doubts that you have, okay? Well, first of all, we talk about internationalization opportunities for companies. It is very important today when we talk about the internationalization process because it's part of the general business in most of the companies. It's a new landscape that they have, new opportunities for the companies. Today, the companies don't think only about the local markets. They have all the chances to be in international markets, maybe neighboring countries or maybe countries from the other side of the world. So it's very important today to consider what the internationalization process and opportunities means to every single company, because it doesn't matter if the company is a small one, a middle one, or a big one. All companies have the opportunity to be or to go international. Some companies, even they just been created to be developed in the international business, not exactly in the local business, but to go international, to find international markets. Sorry. So those elements are internationalization, the opportunities, some of the opportunities, of course, are the expanding to new markets. It requires the companies that they develop locally, and after they have a very strong presence on the local markets, they can see that the product or the service that they have has opportunities in the national markets. So that's an option to expand to international markets, to access to new customer bases. Sometimes the potential that the companies have are bigger, so it's not enough with the local market. They have the opportunity and the capacity to go global and to get new customers everywhere in the world. And of course, if we think about expanding to new markets and accessing to new customers bases, it means that the risk is going to be higher, that the companies are going to diversify the risk. We have to understand that all those opportunities make us face also some risks that come from different elements, from different actors, and risks we have to analyze when we think about going international. There are some key opportunities, of course, that the companies analyze and consider when they think about going international. The emerging markets. The markets are not like stable. I don't mean stable, like they they are always in a process of growing, changing, in a process of evolution. So the markets are not constant, are not going to be always to have the same development. Some markets are growing, and some markets, because of the economic situation, maybe of the environment where they are decreasing. So what we see is that sometimes in some regions of the world are showing us some emerging markets, some opportunities in other areas of the world. And there are another elements that increase those trends of the emerging markets. So that's a key opportunity that some companies can face when they can see that in a region of the world there are emerging some economies, some markets. They see the potential that they may have for their product or service to go there. So that's a key opportunity that some companies analyze and consider to go international. The digital globalization is another key opportunity, and it's been very strong after the crisis and the situation of COVID, because this closure of everything, of the physical markets, show us the opportunity to use the digital world and the digital technology to sell our products and service everywhere. So we don't need today to have a physical place where we can show our products or where we can offer our services, because it depends on the kind of products or service that we have, that we can sell it anywhere in the world through the digital platforms that you have access to. So this is very important for us to consider, because this gives a new opportunity for the companies to go global, to go to the international market. Another key opportunity are the strategic partnerships. With this process of globalization that we've been living in the last 30, 40, 50 years, there are so many different concepts about globalization. But maybe if we think about like the more capitalist globalization and the development of the globalized markets and globalized economic world, of course, we can see that there are opportunities to establish some partnerships, not in our local market, but in the international market. And of course, those are also opportunities that the companies can understand as an opportunity to go abroad, to go international. And last but not least is innovation. This is like a trendy word, but we have to understand also that innovation doesn't mean only like a very latest technological development that is going to help us to show a different product or service. Innovation is just to improve in a different way the quality of our product or service, making it different from the market and to making it like attractive to the consumer. We may have innovation on the strategies of internationalization. We may innovate in the process of negotiation. We may innovate quality of our products, the characteristics of our products or services. So innovation doesn't mean that because I'm selling um, this item, I'm going to have a huge investment to change it or to make it different. No, it's just a maybe a change of something that is going to make it more interesting for the customer. That is not going to be in a dark, maybe because it's trendy with some lighting colors. I'm going to innovate in the shapes and colors that I'm going to use in these products. So innovation important element that doesn't mean a very huge amount of money of investment, but it's just like a change of mind in the quality, in the characteristics, in the strategies that I'm going to use for the process of internationalization of my business. It doesn't matter if it's a good or a service, but it means that I'm going to make it different. And that making different is going to be more attractive to the customer where I want to be. That's why we need to understand and analyze the way of thinking of that customer. I need to understand what the customer needs, and I have to innovate the product that I have to make it go through the stand and say, okay, this is the type of product that I need, but that one with those characteristics is the one that I need, is the one that feels the needs that I have. So innovation is an opportunity also. If we innovate in the process of negotiation, if we innovate in the strategy to penetrate the market, we can make the difference and we can get better results in the process of internationalization of my company, the enterprise that I represent. There are some other factors that are going to influence those internationalization opportunities. We can see here three factors that are very important. The first one talks about the market trends, what I was telling you. The first thing that we have to analyze when we're in the market is to understand and comprehend the consumer. Analyze the growth of that demand if it's possible, because sometimes we can see that there are markets filled of products and that there is no place maybe for us, or there is a small market with a huge offer of products. In this case, if we want to be in that market, we need to get a really good knowledge about the profile of the consumer to us, for us to be able to make difference in that market and to have an advantage in the market. And also the technological advance, the technology that we use, as I was telling you, not always is the technology that we use in the process of making or producing the good that we're going to sell, but maybe is a technology that we use, for example, using social media to be present in that market. The technology of communication, how are we getting to that consumer? And also, as we see that this is talking about market trends, we need to analyze how is that the consumer is thinking, the type of communication that the consumer accepts, because it's not the same to get our message to a young person of 25 and 30 years old that regarding an elderly of 70 or 80. So we have to define the profile of the consumer of our good that we're going to sell or the service. And of course, to define the strategy, the communication that we're going to use, and how are they going to accept that way of communication, or if they have access to the technology that we're offering. For example, if I'm thinking to be very strong using social media because my consumer is in the average of maybe 20 to 35 years old. So I think maybe this type of consumer is more related or familiar with social media. Of course, that's the idea that I have seen from my point of view. But if I'm thinking about getting in an African country where maybe the access to internet is not very good, if not all the people has access to that type of social media, or maybe if I'm thinking, hey, I'm going to use WhatsApp, YouTube, and I'm considering Chinese people, I'm not going anywhere because there is no WhatsApp or YouTube in China. They have their own social media where I have to understand how am I going to design all the strategy to get into that type of consumer that I want to get, because it's very different. Maybe the type of messages or videos, they prefer a short video and not a very long video about the information that I'm going to give them. So there are so many elements from the market trends that I have to understand and to analyze before designing the strategy to make it successful. If I don't consider those elements, I'm going to fail since the start of the process. The second factor is the industry factors, sector-specific dynamics and competitive landscape. The companies are developed in a local market, but when we go international, of course, we need to analyze the profile of the competition. How is this production also seen in that country? The dynamics that they have, of course, the competitive environment where we're going to be. What's the type of companies that are offering the same product or that are in the same sector in that country? Where do they come from? What's the profile of their company, the profile of the employees? So there are so many elements that I need to be aware of. For example, if I'm going to some groceries from Colombia to the United States, I have to analyze these competitive landscapes and, of course, some elements from the industry in the United States that maybe in my country we don't care about them. So, for example, the water that we use to grow groceries. Is it very important to know that, to have that trace on the American consumer? Yes, they do. They need to have all the information from that grocery that they're getting. Because they want to know if it's clean, it doesn't have any bacteria, or what specification that says, of course, it's clean and you can use it and eat it without any trouble. In a country, we don't care about that much, because we assume that it's clean. We assume that we have to wash the groceries at home, and we don't have any troubles of health often about it. But maybe in the States is different. Which is very, very important is the regulatory environment, the policies that facilitate or hinder international expansion. we come back to the same example of the groceries exporting from Colombia to the United States. There are some regulatory requirements or some requirements, legal requirements about the companies, the profile of the employees that work for the companies who grow those groceries. For example, if I'm going to export broccoli, the broccoli in Colombia, of course, has perfect conditions to be exported if we see just the broccoli. But if we go to the regulatory environment, of course, we have to consider that the American law to show that there is no children labor on the process of those groceries. Employees have specific standards of environmental and employment conditions to be employees on this process of growing broccolis. For example, that the employee needs to have the one who's harvesting the broccoli has access to a toilet in a very area where they're working. Those facilities, we never see them in any harvest process here in Colombia. If we go anywhere outside in the countryside, we see how harvesting puts onions, I don't know, carrots, corn. There is no toilet, for example. If we go to see how the onions are harvested, most of the time you see a woman with the children working. For us, common, but that's something that is forbidden in some other countries, in some regulation, like in the States and the European Union. So maybe the quality of our broccoli is perfect for the American consumer, but the process of harvesting that broccoli is not according to the regulatory environment American law. So those are elements that we have to consider, and it's not just about groceries. If we go, for example, for wooden toys made for children, there are some tiny elements that we have to analyze, and it's the quality of the painting that we use to paint those toys. There are some paints that are forbidden to be used in children's toys. Maybe in our regulation we don't see that, we don't face that, we don't have any troubles, we haven't had or we haven't heard about any intoxication cases for these means. But in the European Union, they are serious about this situation. So those are regulatory elements that we have to analyze and consider when we're thinking about those international opportunities for our company, for our product, or for the service that we're offering. So very important elements that we have to consider to be aware, because those elements are going to decide if we're going to be successful or not on our process of going international. Now we talk about this internationalization process. We're going to see some stages of the internationalization. I would say like some opportunities that we have to analyze and understand, because to go international, it doesn't mean that all of us were going to export. Go international, it doesn't mean that we're going to have a production center abroad. It's different for every company. The opportunities are different for every company. One of the stages of internationalization, maybe the most common that we know, is exporting. When we talk about the Colombian company that is going international, we think, oh, it's going to sell their products abroad. That's exporting. And it depends on the market, the potential of the market, the capacity of the company, and of course, the vision that the company has on this process of internationalization. stages are going to change because the easiest, the fastest one is exporting. I'm going to find a customer abroad, maybe someone is going to distribute my product. So I'm going to sell it, my product, and that customer, that single customer that I'm going to have is the one who is going to go through the whole process of distribution and finding another distributors and selling points. So my only business is just to put my product maybe on the ship, and that's it. And they're going to pay me, and that's all the process that I'm going to, because my product is going abroad. Another companies, they export, but they go through the whole process of exportation and they go to the final consumer. And that's a longer process. And of course, a very good knowledge of the market and the process of distribution, logistics, and everything to get, of course, an income of that process. The second stage is to establish foreign subsidiary. Then I'm going to find a place or a partner abroad. So I'm not just going to put my product in a ship, but I'm going to establish a point of distribution somewhere else in the world. And from there, I'm going to distribute my product to the region. Or no, I'm going to find a partner. I'm going to have a joint ventures. I'm going to find a partner and I'm going to share the risk and I'm going to think bigger to get into a region. Or I'm going to just may find a partner in another country and he's going to make part, or maybe he's going to be in charge of all the marketing process and I'm going to be on the production process. So we're going to have an alliance and each of us is going to have some risks, some responsibilities, but we're going to be both in the same places. So there are so many, and from those are many others, of course, depending on the product, on the service, on the market. The opportunities that we have are many, but to analyze what's the potential of a company, what's the what I'm going, what I want to do, what's the internationalization process that I really want to have. Do I want to go through the whole process and have a higher risk, or I just am comfortable selling my product to someone else that is going to make the whole process? It depends on the capacity that I have. It depends on the projection that I have. If I really want to establish a subsidiary, if I want to maybe think, maybe, I don't know, in the future to have a production center somewhere else. So those are the elements that, of course, the company needs to define, to analyze, and decide what's the type of process of internationalization that are going to be developed. How am I going to project it, and how am I going to develop? For this, of course, we have some models of this internationalization process that help us to maybe organize or define or put some companies in one model or the other one. Here, but there are so many models, many as opportunities we have. But here we're going to talk about two models that are completely different, like the two extreme options that we have. The first one is the Uppsala model, which is a model that was developed by the Swedish researchers Johansson and Wall in the 1970s. And they explain how the firms gradually increase their international involvement. What they say is that the companies often start with a very limited or short process of internationalization. In progressive, they're going to, they gain experience and knowledge. It's like going step by step. They think, okay, we're going to try internationalization process. We're going to start by something like maybe participating in an international fair, maybe to find some customers, some distribution, and maybe in the we're going first with those partners, and in the way that we see that is getting higher and bigger, we're going to increase and we're going to consider all other opportunities. So it's not going international, like we're going international and we need to have X number of sales, and we need to have X numbers of customers, and we need to have a profit of X%. It's a process. It's a process about the experience. If we start exporting few quantities of our product and we see that it's getting good, we can think about exporting more. Or we think that maybe if we find an strategic alliance, we can grow. But it's a step by step. According to the experience, according to the knowledge, according to the development and the growth, we're getting bigger. But it's in response to the experience and step by step. It means that if I feel comfortable as a company with a medium process of exportation, I can say, okay, that's it. I'm going to stay there because I'm not going to face a higher risk. These firms typically begin exporting, which is like I was telling you, like the easiest one maybe, which involves, of course, lower risk and commitments. As they gain experience, they may move to more commitment forms like joint ventures or wholly owned subsidiaries, but it depends on the experience that they have. The market knowledge. The model emphasizes the importance of market knowledge. The companies, they learn about the foreign markets gradually. In the way that we're getting into that market, of course, we're getting to know more the customer and the profile of the customer. And this knowledge reduces uncertainty and risk. If you can see elements of Uppsala model is decrease the risk. We're not going to go through higher risks. We're not going to face high risks. We're going to face low risk. Physical distance. The concept of physical distance refers to the perceived differences between the home country and the target country. Culture is about just of distance is not just physically how far is the country, but how different our culture and how different is the economy and how different is the regulation about this market. And firms are more likely to enter markets that are similar to their home market due to lower perceived risks. Sometimes our neighbor markets are the easiest to get into because are more familiar with our culture. Of course, about logistics is going to be easier. And the markets, of course, are going to be similar to the home market. And of course, it means a lower risks. And the learning process, which is very important for Uppsala model, the internationalization is seen as a learning process. The first gain knowledge through experience, which informs their future international strategies. So it depends on the experience that they're going to get, better growth, and they're going to the internationalization process, but according to the knowledge, to the experience, and the process that they live. This model suggests that the firms will typically internationalize in a gradual and systematic way with a focus on learning from each step to build their capabilities and confidence. So the Uppsala model is a process. It's a process of learning about the culture, about the market, and experiencing this market to get more knowledge and, of course, go through more steps of internationalization. It's not going to be fast. It's going to take time, but the risk is going to be low. In the other hand, have the born global firms. As the name says, those are companies which main idea of creation is to go global, to go international. So those companies that internationalize rapidly from the inception, from the moment that you think about the company, often with a few years of establishment. Very new companies that they just want to start their business, and the main idea is to go global, to go to the international market. This concept challenges, of course, the traditional Uppsala model, highlighting that not all companies follow a gradual approach to internationalization. And this is, of course, more common today. We can see that this Uppsala model is the 1970s, but these born global firms, it's a more recent approach about the process of internationalization of the companies. There are some key features. Immediate global focus. The born global business are designed from the outset to operate in international markets. Since the beginning, they're think to be in the international market. They often leverage technology and digital platforms to reach global customers quickly. We were saying before how the technology and the access to communication today is like higher. And of course, these companies are going to use all the technology and the different uses of communication to get to the customer. The innovation and niche markets, these firms are typically often innovative in products or services that cater to specific niche markets. So they design their product service to a specific market. Their unique value proposition help them stand out in the global marketplace. This innovation, this element of difference makes them, of course, affordable in the international market. They use technology, of course they do. Many of those companies use digital marketing, e-commerce, social media to connect with international customers, bypassing traditional barriers to entry. Sometimes one of the barriers that we can face is that we need to get a place in the other world, that we need to design a market um, uh, strategy. But those companies, they use all technology to get to the customer really fast, to all those steps that traditional companies used to have to get into the final customer. Agility and ability, characteristics of this model, because born global companies tend to be smaller and more agile than traditional firms, allowing them to adapt quickly, changing market conditions and customers' needs. And also the network relationship. This, of course, is like very important for these companies because those companies, they often rely on networks and partnerships to facilitate the entry into foreign markets. Sorry, this includes collaborations with local distributors, suppliers, and other businesses. So these companies, they demonstrate that they have a use of the right resources, innovative products, and effective use of technology. They can achieve an international presence much more rapidly than traditional models would suggest. But again, if we go to the traditional way, maybe we think about more robust companies, bigger companies with more employees, and with more difficulties to adapt to a different environment. So those are like the two extremes of the options that we have in the process of internationalization. The one that goes very slow, step by step, getting to know the market and the consumer, and the other one that since the beginning is thought about going international. That is just going to get like a small basis in the local market, and the objective of them and the vision is to go international as soon as they can, as fast as they can, and to get to the final customer very fast. So those are two models that we have to analyze and consider. Maybe we'll find some companies that are in the middle of those two models. Maybe they use some parts of the Uppsala model and some others from the born global companies. So those are options. The models and the theories, they gave us like a framework to analyze. but it's impossible to put all the companies in one or in another, because there are some that they just take parts of each theory to adapt because they consider that it's going to be useful for them. So those are just like a general framework where we can analyze the trend of the companies in a process of internationalization. Well, we continue with some steps in the internationalization process. Um, we have to consider so many third elements that are going to influence all the process of internationalization, because the process of internationalization doesn't depend only on my product, on my service, on my company. Market research and selection, identifying viable markets based on size, growth, and cultural fit. In this case, there are so many elements set in just one idea, which is the viable market, the size of the market, trends or the growth of the market, and the cultural fit. It means we have to analyze each of those elements. Why the size? Because the size of the market is going to help us to consider if we have the capability to supply the market. If we're going to the market off, or if we may be the market small growth, if what's the trend of that market according to my company or my product. It's a possibility of growth, or maybe a first step to go through a bigger market. And the cultural fit, cultures are different. And one example that I have is, even if we think about the cultural differences that we have in our country, imagine the difference that we have from our country to another country. Not all Colombians think the same. Not all Colombians have the same tastes. Not all Colombians like the same music and the same colors. Yes, Professor Miguel? Yes, you raise your hand, you can talk.
Thank you, Professor Angela, for the space. I think the thematic focus on international business opportunities is very appropriate. It allows students to reflect how companies identify potential opportunities in foreign markets while considering factors such as uncertainty, risk, and the global business environment. In my opinion, this is an important starting point because many times initially associate international business only with exporting, but this activity helps then you understand that internationalization is much a broader strategic process. It's a personal opinion.
Thank you, Professor. Yes, sometimes is just the idea is just about maybe exporting or importing, but according to the development of the same global market, the opportunities are so much more. And in this process, for example, we can understand how the Uppsala model is developed, because it's like a way how a company is starting to know the market, the trends of the market, the opportunities of the international or the global market. And in that sense, according to that knowledge, they're considering another opportunities. Sometimes in that of knowledge, as we see in this market research, of course, the company have the chance to learn more about the foreign market and maybe rethink the process of internationalization. Maybe seeing this, getting to know the other market, they can see that maybe can have another opportunity, maybe not just exporting, but maybe by a strategic alliance, or according to the cultural fit, for example, they may consider um, making some changes on the service or the product, and not maybe in the country, but abroad or in other conditions. Also, when we see and we think about the legal requirements, in some cases, it's more strategic not just to consider exporting, but also maybe a strategic alliance to find a partner abroad that has bigger or higher knowledge about these regulations. Sometimes we have a really good product, we have opportunity to export, but we have troubles when it comes to the culture, or when it comes to the regulations about, for example, how to deal with the contract, how the payments are going to be. Those are elements that, in the process of getting to know the market, the companies need to understand and to decide how are they going to manage those risks. So, yes, of course, that's the idea of these courses.
What happened with the professor Angela? Sorry, with the assistants, I call you. Sorry. Sorry for the assistance. I find it very interesting that the activities incorporate the concept, for example, of diplomacy in international business negotiations. This perspective helps students understand that international trade is not only influenced by companies, see? Yes, but also by political and institutional relationships between countries. For example, Prof. Angela,
Yes, I'm back. I have some troubles
yeah,
with internet.
yeah, don't worry, don't worry.
Thank you. I'm going to start sharing again. Okay. So I was saying I'm sorry, because I can't see here. Yes. That also the idea of going international is not just to put the product or the service in the other market. No, we have to analyze the process and to have this implementation and control, to monitor the performance and adapting strategies as needed. We have to analyze the response, the answer that the customer has to our product. Maybe we have to go through the type of customer that is finally getting our product, and how are they thinking, what are they thinking about the product. Do they consider that we have to improve the quality, that maybe there is something that we can improve in the process? Maybe the strategy to getting to know the product is being short to the potential that we have in that market. So there are so many elements that we have to consider in any project that we have. Is not the successful, is not just to put the product or the service or to get the alliance, is to see how the performance is given, is done, how the strategy is working, and what type of things do I have to change, because the market is always changing. The market is not stable. The market changes. The customer changes. If the customer doesn't change, there is no need to innovate, but the customer is always changing. That's why those mobile phones, they are, you buy one, and after 2, 3, 4 years you have to change it. Why? Because the technology is improving, because the quality of the mobile phones are different, because what the applications are need another characteristics that the one that I have before uh, is not good enough to get all the applications. So the market, the customer is always changing, is in a process of evolution. So we need to go through this monitoring performance and to control how the performance of our product is getting into that market, so we can, of course, make some changes to help to have better results. So that's very important for us. It's not stable. It's not just, yes, I have my clinics, I'm selling them and it's a good business. No, no, no. You have to think about what's the improvement that you can make. How can you improve the quality of the product that you have? What are you going to make them more attractive? Maybe you have X, like 10 customers that always buy your product, but you cannot be the whole life with those 10, because one day another company is coming with something different or very simple difference, and those 10 are going to say, no, I don't like this one. I prefer the new one because it's different in any single thing. And then you're going to lose customers. And the idea is to get more customers. And then you have to continue in that analysis of the market, in that analysis of the consumer profile. That is something that is not static. It's always changing and moving. There are some other elements, of course, that we have to analyze is those environmental factors that are going to be always changing, always challenging us, because everything is changing. The competitive advantage factors and the external environmental factors, there are so many elements that are going to influence those markets, and of course the environment when we're developing our business. So it's very important for us to analyze, for example, the stability of the country, the economic stability and the political stability. Those are external environmental factors that are going to influence the performance of our business in everywhere. For example, if we see a simple example, which is our country right now, before it was very attractive for international investment. Before, many companies from different countries wanted to invest in Colombia and to sell their products here. In the last years, we've seen some companies, they've just closed the activity here in Colombia and have left. Why? Because there is an uncertainty about the political and economical trends of the country. And when there is an instability on the economy and the politics of a country, the risks higher. So the companies, they prefer to leave or just to slow the operation on the country until they see that there is a better trend of the economy and the politics. It's the same, for example, right now in the Middle East. In this moment, I think that most of the people that make business there are considering, if you had a travel program scheduled to go to Dubai, I think that you're considering to go to Dubai right now, because there are some political and security situation that is going to make it very risky to go to this area of the world. Like 1 month ago, there was no risk, no problem, but today there is a risk. So you think twice if you have to travel to Dubai in the next week, for example. So there are some elements that we have really to analyze and to consider, because, for example, if an economy, if a social situation is getting very unstable, like start to have so many um, people uncomfortable with the government, uncomfortable with the economy. So there is a risk of insecurity that is going to affect, of course, all the businesses. So those are elements that maybe you don't consider when you analyze the market, but you have to consider the trends of security, policy, and economy in that country to be sure that you're not going to face any risks about that, that your company or your business is not going to be affected by those elements. That maybe the changes of policies are not going to change the situation or um, the guarantees that you have in that market. For example, today in our country, if there is a tax that is going to be implemented for the international companies, an international company is going to think twice if it's better to stay or maybe to leave, and to think to come back to this market later when this tax is going to disappear maybe. But to talk about taxes for a companies is an element, a decisive element for a company to stay in one market. That's an external environmental factor that affects directly every business. And there are some other elements, of course. We have here an example, which is a Starbucks, that is a very common company, a global company, which, as many other international companies, they've had to adapt their global strategy to the markets where they go. So Starbucks is a company that has expanded its presence all over the world and has faced, of course, different cultural preferences and consumer behaviors in different markets. This is more about the relationship about the companies with the characteristics of the cultures. There are some elements of adaptation that they have faced in different markets. One is according
Now, another aspect that
to
I
the
find, okay, sorry, Prof. Angela.
yes, no, it's okay. What were you saying? Okay, I according to the taste.
Sorry, wait a minute. I'll call her. Wait a minute.
Meet.
Another aspect that I find very relevant is the analysis of free trade agreement involving Colombia, for example. Um, I think this is particularly useful because it encourages students to connect the theoretical concept with real international trade policies. Additionally, it allows them to identify concrete opportunities for Colombian companies in global markets. For example, the Starbucks, the environment factors, the advance. Okay, 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 okay.
Hello, hello, I'm back. Do you hear me
Hello,
right now?
Prof. Angela. I listen to you.
Okay, I'm going to share the screen. Just
Slides.
let me know because it was like it was okay on the internet and
Prof, please let me know if I can support you in any way,
yes,
lights
yes, of
or
course.
any other material. I'm standing.
Yes,
Okay,
thank you. So
okay.
now you're hearing me right.
Don't worry, be
It,
happy.
yes, of course. Okay, so I was talking about the Starbucks, the different changes that they had to do. The menu customization in China, they had to include many like matcha latte and a range of teas because that's more a tea culture. In Mexico, they have to serve drinks like café de olla. Like in Colombia, they have café campesino, which is different. Another element that they had to change was the store design and experience because every store is different according to the place where they are. Starbucks designs its stores to reflect local culture and architecture. In Italy, for example, the company create upscale reserve roasteries and emphasize craftsmanship, blending with local coffee culture. So it's not like the same American design that they have in Italy is more related to the culture of the coffee that they have in Italy. The community engagement, the company, they had to engage with local communities through initiatives that support the local farmers and of course sourcing the ingredients locally when possible. This fosters goodwill and enhances its brand image. If you go to Starbucks, maybe you will find that they have coffees from different regions. And in Colombia, of course, they're going to offer coffee from the Andean region, from Nariño, and from different regions of the world, of the country, like showing that partnership that they have with the local producers. And about the culture sensitivity, in regions where coffee cultures is deeply ingrained, like in Italy, Starbucks emphasizes quality and experience over just fast services. This approach helps them align with local customers' expectation. To go for a coffee, it's a different experience in different parts of the world. For some countries, for some cultures, it's very important to sit down, to have a coffee, to share, to talk, and to have a very familiar environment. In other areas of the world, it's going to be different. So in this case of Starbucks, that they have to adapt to the different markets where they go, we can find so many examples of different companies that they have to adapt their menu to wherever they go. I don't know, Professor, if you have any example of about this process of adaptation that the companies need to do or to process or to face when they go global.
I don't remember
Prophet,
in this moment. I don't remember. Sorry
okay. No,
for
it's okay.
this moment.
It's okay.
There.
Well, another element that we have to understand by moving on is about diplomacy, the role of diplomacy in business, and how diplomacy impacts on this process. How the governments, the relations, and international diplomacy can facilitate trade. What's the what do they do to make it happen? What's the impact on market access? So there are some elements like the trade missions and negotiations and building relationships with foreign markets. Those are elements that have to be developed by diplomacy that impact directly on business. For example, the successful trade negotiation between the United States and China relations in any moment of the history, the government relations and international diplomacy play a crucial role in facilitating trade by creating an environment that promotes economic cooperation, reduces barriers, and fosters mutual benefits. We can see on the news that so many people is against all those trade or multilateral or bilateral agreements, but maybe the problem is not the agreement, but is the way how we negotiate and how we put our sectors competing with international sectors. But the free trade agreements help to get better conditions for this process of internationalization, and the companies need to know what are the opportunities that they have, of course, to use them, like the tariff reductions, the regulatory cooperation. Sometimes we need some cooperation and help to improve the quality of those regulations that we have to face when we want to export or when we want to make business somewhere else in the world. So it is very important, all the conditions that we have in this international arena regarding the trade agreements that our country signs, because that gives us also opportunities to go international. We need to know about the trade agreements to know if what type of trade agreements do we have, or how many or which regions do we have agreements. Colombia has bilateral, multilateral, and regional agreements that of course supports the process of internationalizations of the companies. We have also tariff reductions, and we have regulatory cooperations with cooperation with some countries. So we have some conditions to get into the American market, to the European market, as the same as they have to get into our market. Those are elements of negotiation that if we go through that, it comes the night and we don't finish. The diplomacy facilitates the internationalization of the companies through the trade agreements, the legal protections, the fostering innovation, and the companies, they need to understand those trade agreements to use like in a strategic way those agreements to align the company strategies with those trade policies for competitive advantages. So the governments negotiate those trade agreements to look for or to find some reduction on tariffs, quotas, and trade barriers, making it easier for the business to enter to the foreign markets. These agreements establish a legal framework that provides predictability and security for business operating internationally. So the governments work also to align these regulatory standards across countries, making it easier for businesses and comply with local laws and regulations. This can involve mutual recognition, agreements for products standards, and certifications. Yes, Professor Miguel?
Yes, Prof. I also find it very interesting that the activity incorporate the concept of diplomacy in international business negotiations. This perspective helps students understand that international trade is not only influenced by companies, but also by political and institutional relationships between countries. In this sense, concepts such as economic diplomacy or science diplomacy can provide students with a broader understanding of how international agreements and cooperation facilitate commercial relations. About that. Yeah.
Yes. Yes, thank you, Professor. That's true. Sometimes we think that it's just about businessmen and companies, and we forget that the governments and there are very many institutions from the governments and in national arena that they help in those processes. Those diplomatic efforts can lead to improved customer procedures, reduce delays and costs associated with cross-border trade. We need to know that there are so many governmental institutions that work also in the process of internationalizations of the companies. The diplomacy also helps to resolve some conflicts and promote political stability, create safer environments for trade, stable political relationships, and to reduce the risk associated with investment and doing business in foreign markets. The diplomatic channels provide also mechanisms for solving trade disputes, which helps maintain smooth trade relationships. We also have institutions that help in those processes. The diplomatic efforts can facilitate the access to new markets by negotiating terms and allowing foreign companies to enter previously restricted markets. The governments also can promote foreign direct investment, that it helps a lot of national development infrastructure sometimes. The governments also organize, this is very important, trade missions to promote local businesses abroad, to connect them with potential partners, customers, investors. In those missions, they provide valuable networking opportunities. It's a very good opportunity for different businesses to go abroad and to get a bit of knowledge of the other markets. Also, we have some governmental agencies that offer resources and support to help businesses to navigate international markets, including information on regulations, market research, and funding for export initiatives, which in our case might be ProColombia. The governments also, they engage in economic diplomacy to promote national interests, advocating for policies that benefit local industries and facilitate trade relationships. There are some strategic alliances between countries that also enhance trade relationships and align economic interests that can lead to cooperative agreements and mutual support. So diplomacy is really vital for facilitating the trade by establishing frameworks that promote cooperation, reduce barriers, and enhance market access. Through these efforts, countries can create a favorable environment for businesses to thrive in the global marketplace and ultimately driven economic growth and development. So it is very important for us to know and to be sure how important is the diplomacy also in business, as Professor was saying. It's not just about companies or businesses between companies, but also you have to be aware that there are so many national institutions coming from the government that are going to help us in the process of internationalization. Well, I would like to know if you have any doubts, any troubles, if you want to share some ideas.
For me, already one final piece of advice: stay consistent and proactive throughout the course. This subject is not only about understanding concept, but about applying them to real world situations. Don't wait until the last minute. Plan your work, read carefully, and always try to connect the theory with the practice. Starting today, the activity number 3, today and until April 13, no?
Mhm.
Will be available on the platform. It's important to carefully read the activity guide before starting. I would like to reiterate the following clarifications. Although the course during the semester is conducted in English, some explanations or comments may be provided in Spanish when necessary to facilitate understanding and analysis of certain activities with the students. Okay?
That's very important to consider because most of the activities that you have to upload or submit are going to
Yeah.
be collaborative. You need to be very active on the forums, participate, and try to work with your classmates. I know that sometimes it's difficult. Sometimes the time schedule is different for everyone, but you really need to try to be in touch with the other classmates. uh, all communication must be in English, really, because
Yeah.
you're in the last part of the program. And one of the elements of this program is that you need to have a good level of English at the end of the program. So it is very important for you to have that communication and to share your ideas. Don't be afraid because we all have mistakes when we're explaining our ideas because English is not our native language. We all have troubles, but the idea is for you to have like a safe environment where you can practice and when we can help you to improve. So it is very important for you to participate in the forums and also to be aware that you're going to work with a simulator in activity 4, but in this activity you're going to have like sometimes the information and the manual in your hands. So when we're going to talk about the work with the simulator, you must be aware that you have to work with your team. And remember, and this is going to be in Spanish. Mañana es el día del negociador internacional. Nosotros, para que asistan, por favor. Mañana va a ser la celebración en la mañana. Ya se les envió la información a ustedes
En el grupo, los
por la
grupos.
plataforma, por los grupos. Mucho por todas partes ustedes están bombardeados con la información. Por favor, participen. Es nuestro programa el que está celebrando, es nuestro día, así que tenemos que participar. Vincúlense en YouTube, aun si ustedes están en su trabajo, si ustedes están en otras actividades, vincúlense por YouTube, denos un like, saluden. Eso es muy bonito porque el esfuerzo que hace el programa por invitar a Argentina este año, por hacer otras actividades, es muy, muy fuerte. Esto es un trabajo de un año realmente que se transmite en una mañana, entonces tenemos que apoyarnos porque es el trabajo de nuestros compañeros y de nosotros mismos. Entonces, por favor, participemos y como dice el profesor, trabajen, comuniquémonos en español, por favor, dudas, preguntas, para eso está Teams. Y discúlpenos en la demora de la primera actividad porque realmente tuvimos problemas con la plataforma, con la forma de calificar, con la vinculación de los mismos tutores que
Hola.
apenas están recién llegados. Entonces, por favor, téngannos paciencia, pero ya de ahorita en adelante, si Dios quiere, ya todo se normaliza. Mañana entonces día del negociador, en la mañana tenemos nuestra celebración y en la noche también está una actividad, un CIPAS de Doing Business, que es también una charla muy interesante para mejorar ese nivel de inglés y es unas actividades sobre hacer negocios en otros lugares del mundo. Es algo que se hace cada semestre, 2 o 3 veces, sumamente interesante. Todos bienvenidos, por favor participemos, contagiemos a nuestros compañeros de participar. ¿Listo? Muchísimas gracias. Thank you very much and see you tomorrow on our celebration. Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Bye to all.